have the sensitivity of getting them from the greenhouse to the cool store for the pre-cooling. So that has to be done very well. That's the first step. Then we have, within the cool store, we have to pre-cool them and then package them and send them to the airport. That's the next risk point because, for example, for one of the farms in Naivasha, if we have a traffic problem, then we have the cuttings in the truck for too long. That's not good for us. The second part is when they get to the airport, at some point they're sitting in the tarmac. For sensitive cuttings, that's also another risk point for us. Then we also have the occasion where it often happens that we get offloads. So in transit, they're offloaded. When they're there, whenever we track the temperature, we can also see another spike in temperature there.
When I was preparing for this particular event, the Flower Logistics Africa, I reached out to multiple stakeholders. Virginia was one of my initial contact. I tried reaching out to her. I spoke to her on a Zoom call. What I understood is that I will not be able to place her in any of my panels because what she does is completely different from what we are trying to discuss. Now, that's exactly why I thought of sitting with her for a separate one-to-one interview up on stage. Even though I found it different from what we are trying to discuss, I found it also very interesting and very important for this particular conference. Now, what we are talking about here is the cuttings. So I'm no expert in this area, but I would like to know more about this thing. That's the only thing, that's the only reason why I'm up on stage with you. So cuttings are very small portions of a plant that you cut. It's like a stem or a leaf. Please correct if I'm wrong. So you use these small cuttings from the parent plant to generate a new plant. Now, this is very important for the floriculture industry. Selecta One is a very important stakeholder in the floriculture industry. They have Kenya as very important a production site for them, right? Yeah. So tell us about how these cuttings are different from flowers, okay? And how difficult is that logistics? If something goes wrong, what happens to these cuttings and why we should not let that happen in the logistics?
Thank you very much. The first part, I'd like to introduce exactly what we do because I realize most people don't understand what we're talking about when we talk about cuttings. So Selecta One is a breeding company. And when we talk about breeding, if everybody can look on their tables, they can see gypsophilas. For those who don't do flowers, they're the small ones, the ones with the little white flowers. So we don't talk about roses because they are woody plants. We'll talk about gypsophilas. So you have the breeding company, the ones that does all the breeding and genetics. And when they do that, it has to move to a production location. So in this case, the breeders are based in Germany. Most of the places you find the breeders are in Europe, but the production is done in Africa. So in this case, for Selecta, one of the biggest production location is Kenya. And here, once we receive what we call the mother plants, we produce cuttings. Cuttings, I would say, are about 2 centimeters in size. For those who don't know what they are, they're about 2 centimeters to 3 centimeters in size. They are also very soft. They are very young. In terms of plants, they're like babies. So when you talk about the challenges that we have in transport is because they're very soft, they're also very susceptible to temperature changes, they're susceptible to ethylene, they're susceptible to even the way you handle them is enough to damage them. Just a little bit of a squeeze, you cause a bruise on the leaf, and it's a damaged product. So when you ask how my challenges for transporting are different from roses is with cuttings, I need to get them from harvesting to the port producer in about 3 days, maybe maximum 4 days. When I exceed that, they will rot. If during transport at any point they go above 10 degrees, there's a probability when it arrives at the client, it will have either been bruised, it will be yellow, it will be slimy. So it will not be able to grow. So we need to find a way to transport the cutting for it to be fresh enough that when it arrives at the client, when they pot it, it's able to form roots. So it has to continue growing. So the client is not the final producer. And at the client, it grows for another 3 months. in a port.
Okay, Selecta One is a breeder company, as you mentioned, and it found Kenya as an important production site. Give an idea about why Kenya, that's one thing. Take us through that journey, because from the production site here in Kenya, give us some numbers also, how many of these stems are going out from Kenya, and these are all going to Europe, right? So give us an idea about the numbers, why Kenya, and how maybe the journey.
So to put it in perspective, for us in cuttings production, from a hectare, we're able to produce 8 to 9 million cuttings per hectare. So when a producer says that they have 30 hectares under production, those are millions and millions of cuttings. So Kenya is suitable for cuttings production because, one, we have very well-trained labor, we have very good labor, we have very good climate, and for most of the crops, we're able to maneuver when they need to grow. So we have the crops that are day-length neutral. Then for the ones that need long day, we're able to supplement that with lighting. For those that need short day, we're able to put short day with that. So we are able to grow them for whatever climate is required around the world.
Tell us about the mode of transport, because I believe most of these things has to move by air. Have you tried any other transport, and how was the experience? Give us an idea about that.
So yes, at the moment, everything is transported by air. We did do some trials to transport them by sea. And because, like we said, we have quite a lot of cuttings in one box. So we sent 10 boxes. If we say a box has about 5,000 cuttings, it means we sent, 50,000? The problem with that is they could not keep them in the climate that we needed. So by the time it arrived at the client, there was no way they could grow those cuttings. So for us, we have very big numbers in very small boxes. So sending by sea freight does not work for us.
In this supply chain, where are the biggest risk points that you have, where you see the gaps? Can you give me an idea about that?
So for us, we have the sensitivity of getting them from the greenhouse to the cold store for the pre-cooling. So that has to be done very well. That's a first step. Then we have, within the cold store, we have to pre-cool them and then package them and send them to the airport. That's the next risk point because, for example, for one of the farms in Naivasha, if we have a traffic problem, then we have the cuttings in the truck for too long. That's not good for us. The second part is when they get to the airport, at some point they're sitting in the tarmac. For sensitive cuttings, that's also another risk point for us. Then we also have the occasion where it often happens that we get offloads. So in transit, they're offloaded. When they're there, whenever we track the temperature, we can also see another spike in temperature there.
Okay, and I believe the packaging for these cuttings would be completely different from flowers, for example. Give us an idea about that. What specialized packaging you use? What are the solutions available right now?
So for us, in some of the boxes, we have to put ice packs to ensure that we keep the temperature. But also when it comes to winter, we have to insulate them. Because again, if they're on the tarmac and the temperatures drop too low, they will get cold damage. So some of them need to be insulated, others need to have ice pack in the box, and it's a dance. So sometimes some products need to be in ice, then immediately we have freak weather, then we lose that shipment, then we learn from the next one that no, we need to remove the ice packs, we need to insulate this lot.
Okay, so one of the biggest problem that the floriculture industry here in Kenya particularly faces is the capacity availability, for example. That's the biggest discussion that we always have. We talked about how in November and December the capacity went down like anything. Do you also face those problems, and how you deal with them, how you interact with the freight forwarders and airlines?
So for the big markets, we're able to do the BSA agreements. But then the other part of our industry is we have a lot of what we would call small clients. So we have the boxes, they have quite a number of cuttings, but it's still one box. You have a box here, you have 3 boxes here. And because of that, most of the time we're not able to fill a pallet. And when it comes to offloading, we're the first ones to be taken off because we are in pieces. So that sometimes gives us problems. When we have to load on the passenger flights, when again they have too much, when normally tell us that the passengers have too much weight, we are the first ones offloaded. So for us, that's not a good thing.
Okay. Do you have enough infrastructure capacity available here in Kenya to move these goods in very reliable ecosystem?
I believe we do have the capacity because we're able to do it through the other periods. We normally see the problems when we have peak because our season, we would say, is from week 50 to week 10 because we are sending our cuttings ready for spring. Then in between that, we clash with the Valentine. So we're using the same freight forwarders, and they're dealing with the bulk orders of the roses, and at the same time, they have our small boxes, and our boxes have quite a lot more paperwork. They have different temperatures. You have some that need 2 to 4. You have something else that needs 6 to 10. So it clashes within the systems of what they have in peak. But generally, the rest of the year, they do have the capacity.
Okay, tell us more about where the market is. For example, where these cuttings are going, and who are the clients, and what are their demands?
Okay, so most of our clients, so we have the pot and bedding plants, and the best way I can explain it is everything you see grown by the roadside. Because in Kenya, we buy our garden plants by the road. But in Europe, they buy from the big garden centers, or they go to the supermarkets and they buy the potted plants. So we sell the cuttings. We send the cuttings from here to Europe. Then you have the big rooting stations, and they then put them into pots. So I would give, to put the market in perspective, in 2022, the pot industry in Europe was 3.9 billion euros. So it is a very big industry in Europe, but we do also have the cut flowers. So we have the section of cut flowers, but for cut flowers, most of our clients are in Kenya. So then I don't have the issue of logistics for that because the clients are here. It's the products that are going to Europe, the pot and bedding, that tend to have the challenges, but it's a very big industry.
Okay, you also mentioned that logistics service providers sometimes misunderstand, how important these cuttings are. Tell us about what is your message for this service, because you have a lot of, airports, airlines, freight forwarders here. What is your message for them? How you want them to look at your cuttings, and how delicate they are, and how they should handle them?
So for us, what we say is, even though we have quite a number of small boxes, our boxes are very high value because they have quite a lot of cuttings. And sometimes when there's a full cool store of boxes, it's hard to know that. And they say, so when we sign the contracts, they tell us if we can prove that that the cool chain was not maintained, we can claim. And what they tell us is to claim that we need to fill out the paperwork and prove that indeed there was a certified authority that destroyed the crops. But that's actually impossible, because what happens is when we send the cuttings out there, if for some reason along the cool chain it got warm and the cuttings were destroyed, when the client receives them, they just dump them. They are not going to call any authority to come and certify. They just dump them, and then they claim some more. Now, there are times we are able to replace them, and other times we are not able to replace because the market is tight. Now, in the cuttings world, when you don't supply what you're supposed to, you don't refund them the cost of the cutting. You have to pay them the cost of a pot. So they calculate the cost of the pot, the labor, everything that would have gone into the final product. The multiplication of that is very high. So we would like them to know that when they're handling them, to us the value is the final product, not the value that we claim in your paperwork. So it's not as easy as saying that, oh yeah, we will claim for the cuttings back. We would rather the cuttings arrive, because the money we will get back is negligible compared to what we have to compensate the client.
You are the general manager for Selecta One in Kenya, which means you are responsible for many of these movements, many of these logistics, making sure that these processes are followed and you have a reliable logistics system. Give an idea about in next 5 years where you are, how you are envisioning this to grow, this particular industry in Kenya, and what are the potentials, and for the logistics service providers, what challenges we should look forward to?
So we expect the industry to still grow in Kenya, and this is being driven by the fact that in Africa, our main competitors are having other issues. So we are getting more stability in Kenya. So we are noticing, well, before the breeders were moving to Ethiopia, we're now starting to see a trend where they're moving back to Kenya. So I'll give, for example, in Selecta, we had a production location in Ethiopia. which we've now closed and moved back to Kenya. So in this year, I'm moving from 38 hectares to 50 hectares. So we're now moving to that. It means I'll be holding, in terms of the business, Selecta One as a global company, I'll be holding majority of their product. I cannot afford to have logistics problems, because if I'm not delivering the cuttings on time, I am destroying the whole brand. And that's not just for us Selecta. You'll find Syngenta has done the same. All the big breeders, they're starting to consolidate in Kenya. So it's important that we are able to deliver the cuttings on time. The big word at the moment for us is on-time delivery. That when we say the cuttings are arriving on Wednesday, they arrive on Wednesday. It doesn't, for our, the businesses that we work with, when you shift even by a day, you've got to consider they have labor that has no work. Because if you say you're delivering 300,000 cuttings on Monday, they get the labor to do that. When you shift by a day, you can't say, oh, sorry, don't come today, come tomorrow. So for us, we need to have that on-time delivery, that we have that guarantee that when we load the product, it gets on this day. We have very little maneuver on delivery and quality.
Okay, this is a very interesting conversation, but we don't have much time left right now. I have to stop it here, but I will take one or two questions. If there are any questions from the audience.
Good afternoon. My name is Mercy, Head of Logistics for Syngenta Flowers. And I really like the conversation about cuttings. It's not usually discussed a lot of times. And the question to you, Virginia, would be especially with the reduction of flights into Amsterdam, we have been forced to use alternatives. For example, we're going into Belgium more. And as in the previous discussions that we had in the morning, we've seen the infrastructure in some of these airports is it's a challenge. And considering the shelf life that we have for the cuttings that we have, 72 hours is max. So what would be your proposal or your suggestion to these alternatives? Because the sector is growing and we have to grow with it. So maybe if you have some advice that you can give to also our partners in the airports in terms of the effects that any delay it gives to, of course, to our customers, it would be really nice. Yeah.
Today in the morning, we had presentations from what we would call the smaller airports. I think we need to have them better equipped for the cuttings production, because we are not limited to going to the auction house. Actually, we have no need to be at the auction house. So we are best equipped to be moved to the other airports. So if they're equipped for us, where they're able to process the paperwork quickly, they're able to clear our cuttings quickly, and we can have the tracking companies picking from there, that will solve our problem. We just need to we need to avoid going to where, like we say, we are competing with all the other cut flowers, and we move to the other airports. But they, like I said, they need to be equipped for us, and especially clearance and, like we say, the phytosanitary certificates and documentation. That tends to be our problem in the smaller airports.
My question is on how are you improving packaging of cuttings from Selecta?
So what we have is, we have an actually very robust R&D department. So our boxes are not what the roses guys use. So we have different boxes. We have the inner boxes. You have the support on the side. We ensure that our box does not collapse at any point, because it will squash the cuttings. So we buy the more expensive boxes. And if for some reason, if a box is shipped and even they begin to see the paper is warping, we get the feedback immediately. That I'll get the call myself.
Okay, okay. Cargorite would like to partner you on packaging, because you've developed a packaging for cutting specifically. Thank you.
So just I'll give you my card later. You give us the boxes. So what we normally do is we just do trials, like we say. We will package the cuttings, we will send them to our routing stations, and they'll give us feedback on how the boxes arrive.
It was a very interesting conversation. The cuttings are delicate. They need very sophisticated logistics service offerings. Virginia, thank you so much for joining us today.